Today's Easy 99.1 presents South of Boston, a weekly discussion of the happenings, business, and community events from Quincy to the South Coast and beyond. Any opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the ownership, management, or staff of today's Easy 99.1. It's South of Boston with this week's host, Charlie Gilmore.
Welcome to South of Boston, Conversations with South Shore's business community leaders. I'm your host, Charlie Gilmore, and this week's guest is Dakota from
Keller Williams Realty, DependOnDakota.com.
DependOnDakota.com. Okay, this week we're going to talk about the real estate market on the South Shore. Yep. And now, Dakota, let's do a little history here.
Sure.
Okay, we had the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008 that really sent the nation, real estate market, into a tailspin.
It did. And that's probably right about the time when everybody was running out. I put my real estate shoes on and ran right in. And, probably the best thing that ever happened, but I learned a lot.
Right. Okay. So you have this market that basically implodes because of the whole issues with how they were writing mortgages at that time, inflating values
Pinky
of
swear
homes.
for a mortgage.
Right. And it was just craziness.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the market imploded, we all heard stories of people losing their home, people living in their homes and not paying their mortgages, properties being abandoned. So you had this market that was filled with inventory.
Lots of inventory, and not many people in a position to buy, and scared to buy.
And very scared to buy. And because a lot of people had bought, valuations were very high, and all of a sudden they found themselves underwater, meaning that their mortgage was greater than the value of their house.
Correct.
Okay, so that is the popular perception of where the market is, and is that where it is today?
It's done a 180, Charlie. It's an exciting market. People are out buying again. Sellers have leverage for a change, which is something you didn't see 7 or 8 years ago. You know, you'd have a home inspection issue after your house had been on the market for 4 or 5 months with no showings, and you would bend over backwards to make sure that buyer stayed around. Now you have multiple offers in just a few days on the market. Somebody wants to give you a hard time or in a negotiation, you can just move on to the next one.
So it's really gone, the pendulum once again has swung back to the seller's side.
It has.
Okay, so what we have here is a perception of the marketplace that the buyers are in control. The buyers can make offers that are way below market valuation and get some kind of response, but that's not happening anymore.
No, in fact, what you're seeing is consistently you're seeing, as long as you price the house right, bidding wars, multiple offers, which in fact, if you lowball, you're not even going to make it to the table, because you're going to have offers that are very competitive. You're hearing the term final and best a lot. So a lot of times, and
what does that mean, final and best?
I mean, you put an offer in, and instead of coming back with an actual counter offer, the seller just says, look, there's 4 of you here that have put offers in front of you. You guys put your best offer. If it's over asking, it's over asking.
Wow. So you've been in situations where you have had 4 buyers bidding on the same property.
Yes.
And now the seller is sitting there going, okay, I've got 4 offers.
Yes.
And what we're going to do is everyone's going to get an opportunity to make me one more offer, and it's going to be their final and best offer. Sure. And it could easily go over the asking price.
Yes, a common practice actually now in this market, what I'm seeing is a lot of times you'll see a house come on the market, and you'll see it'll be a Tuesday or Wednesday, and clients will call up and they'll want to see it right away because they know. And what happens is a lot of times the sellers aren't doing any showings until that first open house, because they're letting the juices flow and getting everybody, all excited. And then what happens is it is just a mob scene at the open house, and that creates is a lot of excitement. You love the kitchen. Well, instead of just going on a showing and seeing it, now you're there and you see this other couple eyeing the kitchen, and you're kind of like, wait, that's going to be my kitchen, and it kind of creates this
sense of competition.
Yeah, and now the offers come a lot quicker.
I got you. And they must be much closer to asking price.
Yes, in fact, I was just if you kind of look at some of the multifamilies in Braintree, for example, one situation I was comping out, and I looked, and it was almost like it was reverse. Every single sale price was over the list price, and every single home had sold under 10 days.
So the multifamilies would be what, duplexes? Or,
Sure. Yep.
And what type of person is buying that?
There's two actually. The touching on the rents being so high, I think that's also what's getting people back into this market. So there's situations. I just sold a 2-family in Dorchester actually, and they are going to make more money by renting out one side that will cover their mortgage as they live in the other side. And
so they're going to live on one side.
Yes.
And the rent will cover the mortgage?
Yes.
Wow.
On the other side. So
that's a dream come true.
It's happening. The rents just keep going up, and they're getting them. So the people now that maybe didn't think that they could get a mortgage or didn't understand that a mortgage actually is cheaper than renting at times. And you don't need 20% down either. There's FHA loans for 3.5%. You could do 5% conventional. In some cases, that's first, last, and security. Think about it.
Okay, so that's one of the big issues, though, is now qualifying for the mortgage, because I know that January 1st of this year, they tightened up the qualifications for getting a mortgage. So people who are interested or thinking about getting into the market or selling their home and moving to another property or another town or something, you really have to kind of first step is make sure that you're going to qualify and find out how much you qualify for, right?
Yeah, the pendulum has completely swung the other way on this. I mean, again, before it was kind of a wink and a nod and just tell me that you're the CEO somewhere and I'll give you a mortgage.
Yes.
And now, I mean, there's, we're getting... You're going to need blood samples at some point. I mean, there's,
right.
There's a lot of frustration with buyers, too,
right.
because they ask for a lot of documentation, and they need you to explain everything. And it feels overkill. But again, like we talked about 7 or 8 years ago, had certain systems been in place that they do implement, we wouldn't have gone
You wouldn't go, right. And, from my side, as you know, Dakota, I do retirement planning. So a lot of my clients are actually retired, and they want to buy a home down in Hilton Head or Florida or someplace down south for the golfing in the winter. And before it was just no problem. A lot of them have a tremendous amount of assets. They have plenty of money coming in, plenty of income on a monthly basis, and they can't qualify for a mortgage. And that's why the cash buyer nationally is so big.
Exactly.
I think it's over 30% of all properties sold nationally is cash.
Yes, and that's true, too, because where we're seeing a lot of issues comes at the appraisal point and maybe in underwriting, which, you don't really need to take care of that when you have a cash buyer. In a rising market, you have these appraisers looking at comps. They're sometimes having a hard time because things are going for so much over asking. They're having a hard time to justify it to the bank that it's worth it. But it is, because you just had 5 people willing to pay that.
Correct.
So it's worth it, but they got to go on comps that,
yes.
it's just been creeping up.
And I think that the standards for the guys doing the appraisals, the appraisers, the real estate appraisers, their standards have changed and tightened.
Very much.
And they can't
tight,
build in. If it goes over asking price, that means that the market is saying no. There's a new value for real estate at this point, and the appraisers have to justify that.
Yes.
And they have methods of doing that, but it's difficult to accept. So do you find in those situations that the buyer has to come up with more money, maybe do 20% down, or is it going to change the way how much they get for a mortgage?
You're a little bit safer by putting more down, because again, if it comes in, the appraisal comes in under this, the buyer might want you to come down in price, what have you. But just because it comes in under doesn't necessarily mean you won't get the mortgage. But you're right, with a lower down payment, it would cut it a little bit closer.
Right.
I think the appraisers are getting a little bit better on adjusting and understanding that, because now you can kind of see the trend. So I think we can kind of throw the trending element into it, which definitely helps. But things like sometimes banks are getting tougher on, if you have, for example, an FHA or a VA loan, and there's chipping paint or pests, certain things that the buyer and seller can normally just negotiate amongst themselves.
Right.
The bank is going to step in and say, we're not financing this house unless you get it fixed. And
unless it's perfect.
And we're seeing a lot of reappraisals. People having to go back out and check it and make sure things are done correctly.
Okay, so as far as qualifying for the mortgage, in the way the banks are qualifying the individuals and the property, that's tightened up a lot.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the buyers. Okay, are they buyers that are coming into this market? Are they coming from out of state? Are they coming from the town next door or inside the town? Where are the buyers coming from?
I honestly see a lot of buyers coming from rentals.
From rentals.
A lot of buyers are coming from rentals. A lot of buyers
And
are...
is there an age group that you're seeing mostly?
I'm working
of?
with a lot of first-time buyers right now, to be honest, that are just, again, exorbitant rents. The other group of people that I'm working with are people who are looking to put their money in something that they can make money, passive income. So these are not necessarily...
Investors.
Yeah, and it's not like your top New York executive investor. It's your average Joe that says, wow, just do the math. My mortgage on this little condo over here is could be $700, but I could get $1,100
in rent.
So now that's even if it's just a few $100s, that's great.
Well, what you see there is, and I'll tell you what it is, Dakota, is an investor, a person with money, and let's say I have $500,000 and I'm very conservative and I want to keep it in the bank, so I put it in a CD. Well, the CD is paying absolutely nothing.
Right.
It pays under 1%. So
change.
I'm wasting my time keeping my money safe in a bank. However, my only alternative is the stock market that makes no sense. Okay, it's high risk. At any point in time, the thing can go down 10 to 15%.
Right.
So as an investor, I don't want to take that type of risk. So there's really no other alternative for them except for the real estate market.
Right, on a steady basis, and it's safe now, and rents aren't going down anytime soon. It blows my mind what people can get for rent, and they're making the payments.
Right. So you have this rental market, and one of the reasons that the rental market is so strong is that you have to qualify for this mortgage. It's a little tougher.
It's tougher, yep.
Okay, so people have people were afraid to get into the market because they didn't know how stable it was back in 2008, 2009, 2010. So
bankruptcies and short sales and foreclosures, you could be perfect on paper minus that little side note, but that's going to keep you out of the market for a little bit longer just because, that's the way it is. So
on one hand, we have the buyers. There's been a pool of buyers that are building because they have to save more money. They need a little bit more money to come in to put down, prove income, so on and so on. So now these people are starting to move into the market. I think there's a comfort level that the market is solid.
Yes.
Okay. There's a realization that the average rents that people are paying are higher, much higher, than they would be paying as a mortgage. And that's not even taking in the tax deduction of the interest on the mortgage.
Well, exactly, which is I don't think a lot of people realize either. And I think we're in a time now, a lot of landlords experimenting with these raising of rents because it's just there is a majority of people out there that they're just fed up with paying high rent and not owning anything.
Right. So into the marketplace, this larger pool of buyers have really shown up. And it's really been this year, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say, over the past year. I mean, these past few months have been incredibly on fire. I mean, houses just go on and they just go. There's been such a pent-up demand. And now, you go from a place where there were, no buyers on the sideline and tons of inventory. Mm-hmm. Now what happens is, people are checking their email every single day to see if there's an alert. Did a new house come on? So you get maybe 500 sets of eyes just waiting. Your house comes on and boom,
the market reacts.
Flies to honey, absolutely, and just again,
right.
And they maybe they get you right in. Maybe they say no until the open house and create that pandemonium and so it's a really exciting time for sellers.
Okay, so let's take a look at the seller side now. Back in the bad days of 2008, 2009. Sellers, wow, I'm underwater. I owe more on this house than it's worth. Mm-hmm. I lost my job. I can't afford to make my mortgage payments. I'm living in the house without making any payments. So on that side of the market, the inventory dramatically increased quickly.
The bank released a lot of foreclosures, a lot of short sales. And the reason why it was probably right at that same time, and I don't know if you remember back then, but a lot of these mortgages were structured as such so that it was really easy to get into. You kind of flow with it, but then there was that 5-year arm, that 7-year arm, where that balloon payment was due. And everybody turned a blind eye to that. And that's why it was almost in cycles like that. You saw it 7 years after all those, like clockwork. Because
Boom.
that balloon payment came in. Some people have been using their houses like piggy banks.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody.
Nope, but some did.
People have.
Yep.
And then a lot of people just timing.
Yes.
The problem is when you buy high, and I've had people, they kick themselves. Oh my, I shouldn't have paid that. But you know what? What if gas only costs $1 in 5 years? Are we going to look back and say, I can't believe we were paying $3.50? I mean,
right.
It was what it was.
Yeah, and so it is what it is. And so now you look at this market going forward, and what about the stability of the prices that we're seeing? Could there be a collapse where we're going to lose 30% market value again?
The reason I don't think so is because if you look at the reason for the collapse before, there was no basis on
Valuations.
right and getting people qualified.
Yep.
Now they are very strict on the ratios. I mean, it's hard as a self-employed person.
Mm-hmm.
I have great credit, money in the bank, things of that nature, and it would be harder for me to get a mortgage than somebody who's, say, making less, has a shorter credit
Has a
score,
W-2.
but they have a W-2.
There you go.
Banks don't like 1099s.
Nope.
Because that to them says, well, you could stop making money at any time.
Exactly.
But so could a W-2.
I know you can get fired at any time too,
yeah,
right?
so,
but that's the way the system works.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a matter of is it right or is it wrong or does it make sense? It's like, boom, these are the qualification guidelines.
Right.
You have to squeeze into them or you're not going to make it. There are lenders who are not Fannie and Freddie insured. Right. They hold the mortgage in-house.
That's the route. A lot of times, if you're self-employed and whatnot, your
Yeah.
credit unions, because they keep the money in-house, so they could look at a 25% down loan of somebody with great credit, great job, and they say, man, this is great. The reason why Fannie and Freddie won't, like you said, there's a guideline. Rule 27.2, Section B says
Yes.
X. And if you break... and again, that loan's going to be sold 15 times over.
Yeah.
And if anybody ever defaults, they're going to come back to the first guy. They're going to come back after. And so they're not really paying attention to common sense as much as they're making sure that every single rule is followed so nobody can point the finger back at them.
Exactly. So now you have these sellers. Their houses are not underwater anymore, are they?
Nope. People are making money again.
Right. So you had this market high water evaluation. The tide went out. A lot of people are left holding property that they owed more than it was worth. That was in 2009. That is no longer the case. Now these same people are coming back and saying, okay, we can actually sell the house and pay off our existing mortgage, walk away with some equity, and buy somewhere else. So we're getting back to a normal, healthy market.
Well, it was exciting for me, again, getting in at the worst part. The markets, if you take a step back and look over 100 years, that line graph is going to still be a smooth line.
Right.
That was just a blip,
Yep.
But what I'm noticing, I've been in the business now long enough where a lot of my first-time buyers or my clients that I work with when I first started, I've now sold their home to help them find another one. And I would say I don't think I've had one where since I got in the market, they've sold for less. I've seen the appreciation.
Right.
Maybe not as great in some cases as others, but what it proves is we haven't gone backwards.
No, we haven't gone backwards. We've actually gone forward.
Yes.
We've caught up to the valuations of where they were back in 2008.
And back to why I don't think it's a bubble is because, again, if you qualify for a mortgage, the bank has thoroughly scrubbed and made sure that you can afford.
Right, and
the
that is the most difficult thing. And actually, at this point, it's probably helping the market from getting too hot because it's controlling the buyers as they're coming in.
Yes,
the qualification of those buyers actually have to be better than the marketplace demands.
Yes,
if you look at it, if you think about it. You
Right.
know? I mean, to qualify, the standards that they have for these mortgages is so high now that you're actually a better qualified buyer than the marketplace would demand for the price that you're going to pay.
You are, and you probably have much more anxiety concerns, and
Right.
it can be a process. And like I said, at the end of the day, usually the things will work out and everything happens. But the buyers just aren't used to having to present so much information, so many letters explaining things, explaining where did that $1,000 come in.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Where you have to document in your bank accounts where the money came from.
I actually just had a situation where you can get a gift. So if somebody in your family wants to give you a gift, that's fine. That can go towards your down payment. However, you have to write the letter. Well, I just had one where the individual's mother in the memo line wrote the word loan in the memo line.
Right.
And the bank rejected it, and we needed to go elsewhere.
Right.
And and they're going to just and common sense would say, all right, well, she just. That's what the mother wrote. I mean, what if there was a winky emoticon? Would it be okay? And,
yeah, right.
But that clearly violated one of those little bylaws in the fine print. So they kicked it out.
Right. Okay. So now let's get back to the seller then. So if the seller is not underwater anymore, the seller doesn't have a gun to his or her head. Okay. What is the seller doing? Like, are they generally moving out of state? Are they moving? Do you see a lot like next door, same town, same region? What are they doing? Is there any trend that you see?
I'm seeing a lot same town.
Definitely okay. So they're moving up.
Moving on up, absolutely.
Right.
Yep,
now that's interesting.
Yeah,
so
growing.
They're basically moving from one house, staying in the similar town or similar area, and just moving to a better house that fits their needs.
Yeah, and we're seeing probably an influx of younger people that are renting in the city.
Right. Now
they're getting flushed out because the rents are going up. Buildings are being sold. You see that a lot. The renters are now having to buy because it's coming to light that the house that they live in, and they're getting frustrated because the rental inventory is tight too.
It's very tight.
Very tight. So it goes.
Right.
That's why they can command such high prices.
Uh-huh.
So it is a lot of lifestyle. You'll see a lot of downsizers.
So you're seeing like rental properties being sold to investors, and the first thing they're doing is turning around and raising the rent to justify the higher price that they just paid. Okay. And
a lot of these people might have had lower, grandfathered in lower rents, and they were great tenants, and the other owner,
just let it be, because their cost basis was so much lower. But now they sold it. The buyer comes in. He's got a much higher cost basis, pushing up the rents.
Yep.
Okay.
And there'll be somebody that'll pay it.
So that's coming out of Boston, and so now you're having this flood come out of Boston into the suburbs.
Yep.
Young families, which are allowing families who are kind of like middle-aged, as far as the kids are like 8, 9, 10 years old maybe, need a bigger home, nicer neighborhood, bigger yard, something like that. So they're pushing up, they're moving up. And so that is the traditional marketplace right there.
Right.
Okay. Starter home, moving, people moving up through different levels of real estate as they age and as they prosper. So I think that's a very good sign also, isn't it? That
stability,
this is a good, healthy market. It isn't an overheated market.
Inflated.
It isn't inflated and have a lot of fluff. Then you can see the valuations are all over the place, though. I mean, I think that the valuations up in Hingham and Hanover compared to Plymouth, Carver, Lakeville, the South Shore, deeper South Shore is dramatically different.
Well, you're paying for the convenience to get to the city.
Right.
That's why, Braintree, Quincy, I mean, you got the red line right there. Weymouth is still right there because you have the commuter rail. You can just drive to, the red line.
Yeah.
And you're right off, you're right on the highway, easy on, easy off. So you get a little discount as you get further down because you're sacrificing some of that convenience.
Right.
But
and you're paying more of a premium as you push east towards the water, obviously.
Absolutely.
So where you have Hingham, Situate, Cohasset, those prices are astronomical, relative.
Right, and Dorchester is the new Southie. I just put one on in I had clients that we put an offer on a home before I even had it listed because we didn't have the pictures yet, and the couple had already turned down. They didn't want to deal with home sale contingencies. Well, they saw the Dorchester address, and they knew that it was going to go. We got that offer accepted. We put the house on the market, and we had it sold in about 2 days.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Now, let's talk about that. So, all right, so if I'm a seller, why don't I just sell my own house? What do I need Dakota for?
Well, that's a good point. I've heard that a lot. The problem is when you're a for sale by owner, first of all, every buyer already knows that you're not paying the commission. So they know you're getting a deal, so they're going to want that same deal on their side.
The buyer is going to be asking for the deal,
yes.
Right?
With me, myself, and my marketing, I'm able to blanket, not only all of South Shore, but just everywhere, other towns, other states, with my website, and just really, it's a numbers game, getting the word out there. I use professional photography. You want to really pop online. Some for sale by owners, I mean, you go on maybe one site, you're not gonna know about it. The other thing is,
well, let's say this: even if you did a for sale by owner, and you happen to get multiple offers on your house, that could be very well because you priced it on the market and you didn't realize it, right? I mean, that's the problem with being selling it yourself is you bring the expertise of knowing exactly where the market is on that given day. Meaning
Sure.
you could have just finished or gotten a house that had multiple bids the day before, and you realized quickly that the market is valuations are rising, and that you should be placing this house on the market at a higher value than
Right.
the seller thinks.
And the negotiate. I mean, in these negotiations, there's a way to do these final and best to absolutely get the most money possible. So if a seller finds themselves negotiating and maybe really ending up with, say, 92% of purchase price, I could negotiate 101% of your purchase price. Based on different negotiation tactics
And strategies, right.
and strategies that we've done for years. They're ingrained in us. The other thing is, do you know what smoke detector? Do you know where a photoelectric smoke detector needs to go?
Right.
Because these are things that are going to come up. There's a
Right.
lot of
Yeah, you have to have the fire department come and sign off on the deal,
there's
correct?
a lot of things, exactly.
And then there's Title V, that's another thing. So,
Certain areas.
and then house inspector and that type of stuff.
Sure.
So there is a lot to it. So Dakota, how would someone get in touch with you if they would like to have you become their agent and help them buy or sell their
I
house?
would love to have you. I would love to have anyone buy or sell. I can help you out. 781-883-7980 is my phone number. And you can also reach me if you click dependondakota.com.
Okay, so online, all they have to do is go to dependondakota.com.
Correct.
Okay, that brings them to your website with all your contact information, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, if they just want to call you directly, let's have everybody out there listening to us reach for a pen and grab a piece of paper.
Sure.
And that telephone number, real slow, once again is?
All right. It's 781-883-7980. And you could email me, pretty easy, dakota@kw.com.
Okay, so that's Dakota, Dakota, dependondakota.com.
That's right.
All right, great. Thank you very much for being on the show today.
Pleasure,
It was
Charlie.
great having you here. Please come back again soon because I think everyone always is interested in the state of the real estate market.
very fascinating.
Because, listen, let's look at it. If the real estate prices are rising, that means people who are not in the market, their equity in their home is growing. And this opens up a whole field of possibilities to
Exactly.
people. So if you weren't thinking about moving up, maybe now is the best time
I'll come
to get in
over.
touch with you and
come
find
over
out
and
what
let
the
you know.
valuation of their property is, what
Sure.
they can do.
Just let them know. And you don't have to do anything, but come over. Just if you're curious, I'd love to come over and help you out.
Okay, great. Have a good weekend.
South of Boston, presented weekly at this time on Today's Easy 99.1. Any reproduction or use of this program without the expressed written permission of Today's Easy 99.1 is prohibited. Join us next Sunday morning for South of Boston, a public affairs presentation of Today's Easy 99.1.